Good morning, everyone. My name is Brian Hamman. I'm the chairman of the Lee County Board of County Commissioners. That's B-R-I-A-N. Hamman is H-A-M-M-A-N. And I just wanted to get together with you all this morning to talk about two processes that are actually independent of each other, but they do relate to each other to help maybe clarify some of the reporting that happens related to the hurricane recovery. We're going to be talking about the hurricane recovery for a long time, years to come here in Lee County. And I thought the more that we could get out about how each process is going to work, the better we could help educate the public. We could work together to help educate the public on where the money is and where the timing is for certain efforts. So the first thing I want to talk about is the Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery money. This is the $1.1 billion that we talk about a lot. So we know you'll be covering that story for a long time. The first thing I want to say is there's no delay in receiving the $1.1 billion from the Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD. Those HUD dollars are in the process and they're on track, the same timeline that we've always talked about for those. So when we first were notified that we were going to be awarded the HUD money, this timeline was presented to the Board of County Commissioners. We have gone through all the different phases that we were required to go through. We have submitted our HUD action plan to HUD. They are reviewing it. And Lord willing, by the beginning of next year, we will have the approval from them to go forward with putting those dollars out into the market. So this is one grant, one funding mechanism that will help us take care of housing and infrastructure repairs. But it's really only just one piece of the puzzle. We have on the other side here a longer term planning effort called the Long-Term Recovery Task Force. We call it ResilientLee. This is, think of this like the greater planning effort. This is going to plan all of the needs, all of the things that need to be repaired, and all of the things that we need to do as a community to be more resilient going forward. So some of this money may fund some of the needs that this group identifies as our advisory group, but they're two independent processes. This HUD money from the Community Development Block Grant is going to continue on this path regardless of the planning effort. So I wanted to just clarify that because I saw some reports over the weekend that $1.1 billion is being delayed to our community, and I don't want folks who have already been victimized by Hurricane Ian to feel like, hey, there's something wrong and they're not going to get help. It's already been over a year since a lot of them have gotten help. And when I testified before Congress at their oversight hearing that they held here locally, I said, look, how can you call it hurricane recovery dollars when it takes more than a year to get through this process? I mean, I think the process needs to be sharpened up. So we talk about that. This is what we said all along, that this was the process we'd go for. This process is happening. These disaster recovery funds can be used for housing, critical public infrastructure, economic revitalization, some public services, and some of this could actually even pay for some of the planning that we do over here, but it's not dependent on it. In fact, we were going to do this no matter what. Okay, so for us here in Lee County, these dollars from the Community Development Block Grant will be spent primarily in two buckets. One, the housing bucket, and the other, the infrastructure bucket. It's important to know that these funds do have restrictions on them. And those restrictions are that these funds must be spent on activities directly related to Ian damage, and most of these funds must principally benefit low and moderate income communities, okay? So there's going to be efforts that the planning task force is going to come up with that may not be specifically geared toward low to moderate income communities that can't be paid for with these funds. So we're going to need to go and get different funds, different grants to pay for what they come up with. Okay, so there are a lot more requirements about how we use these, but those are the main ones that I wanted to point out that taxpayers and residents need to know. We're working diligently to get these dollars that were provided to us by Housing and Urban Development into the hands of the folks who need their housing repaired and rebuilt. And this is going to continue on regardless of what happens on the planning side. So we've conducted community meetings throughout Lee County to solicit feedback on this plan. You might remember we had that 31-day public comment period. So we took all that, we assimilated it into the plan. So that is off to the races. We've got a greater flow chart so you can kind of see where that money's going from here. So now let's talk more about ResilientLee. So ResilientLee is a task force. It's a board-appointed advisory panel. It includes both public officials and individual citizens who are experts in their field to give us advice on how to recover and how to build a stronger community after Hurricane Ian. One of the things that I think the entire County Commission identified after Hurricane Ian was, first, this is going to be the most significant disaster that Lee County has ever tried to recover from. And second, we needed the public to be a part of that. And so we felt that it was that important to have public input and input from the cities that we created the ResilientLee Task Force to bring all of these branches and all of these experts together from our community to talk about what can we do to rebuild and what can we do to be better for the next time. So this speaks again to the future community needs. This will be a giant needs list. I anticipate this to be, actually I anticipate the needs that will be outlined in this plan to cost far more than $1.1 billion. And so some of these needs that are highlighted will be funded by the state. Some of them will be funded by part of this federal government money, and some of it we're going to have to come up with locally. This is basically going to be, if you talk in terms of football, this is going to be the playbook that we take to Tallahassee and to Washington, D.C. and say, here's what's broken in our community, and here's what we need to fix so that we're more resilient for the next time we see a storm. And we're going to need your help. This is what we're going to say to the lawmakers. We're going to need your help funding some of these activities so that our community can come back stronger and better than it was before. So that's kind of how the two relate to each other. Again, I kind of covered it. For much of this, we're going to have to ask for additional dollars. The ResilientLee group, we originally anticipated the ResilientLee group to finish in the December timeframe of this year. We actually checked in with the ResilientLee group in August. The Board of County Commissioners in August had a workshop. We reviewed the work that had been done so far. We actually decided at that time some changes needed to be made. We wanted to see more input and representation from the unincorporated parts of Lee County. One example was I represent the North Fort Myers district, and North Fort Myers actually wasn't even talked about in the plan. That community saw flooding and devastation. So what we did was we met with the task force and the leadership of the task force after that, and we said, hey guys, we need to take a pause. We need to do a little bit of reorganization. We need to look at the pieces that were missing from the work that's been done so far, and we need to get going again on the task force that takes into account the entire community. And so now we realize that because you're going to do this extra work, we're anticipating that we'll be done with the entire game plan by February. So that's how that's going to go. But again, that doesn't have a bearing. It's independent from what's going to happen with the $1.1 billion. So again, just my point today was to let the residents know, no delay on receiving the money from HUD. In fact, we're working very hard to make sure that we meet all these requirements that the federal government has put us under. All of this is going to be audited. All the paper trails will be there. We're going to make sure that we get this money, though, into the hands of the residents as fast as possible.